We think we know Homelander. We're used to the series version, an unstable narcissist, a media manipulator, a man desperately seeking approval while hiding his secrets. But if you think the TV Homelander is a monster, you have no idea what happens in the pages of the comics. Forget the politics, the pent-up frustration, or the identity crises. In the comics, he isn't just a villain. He is a walking biological error, a sociopath with almost no trace of humanity, whose very existence is an affront to logic. While the show tries to humanize his insecurities, the original Homelander reminds us of a terrifying truth. He wasn't born to be loved. He was born to devour everything in his path. Today, we're going to dissect why the comic book Homelander isn't just a villain. He is, pure and simple, an insane maniac. The comic book Homelander isn't a character to be understood. He's a study of what happens when you give the power of a god to a spoiled sociopath without morals. In the series, we see a man shaped by Vought, suffering from the lack of a mother. Here, that shaping was a process of pure torture, devoid of any attempt to create a father figure. Homelander's first act, seconds after leaving the womb, was to kill his own mother and incinerate every scientist present. There was no baby crying. He wasn't raised to be a hero. He was created to be a weapon of mass extermination. While on screen he has conflicts, on the pages he just knows he is superior. The asylum in South Dakota where he was kept wasn't a school. It was a cage containing a baby with the power of a hydrogen bomb. Imagine spending the first 18 years of your life watched by scientists who place a nuclear device in your hands, waiting for the slightest sign of failure to blow everything to bits. That doesn't create a man with childhood trauma. That creates an entity that sees humanity only as an obstacle to be removed. Vought never wanted him to be a beloved hero. They wanted him to be the ultimate tool of control. But what they forgot is that weapons have no loyalty. Up to this point, you might think, okay, he's aggressive, but what separates a villain from an insane maniac is how he destroys others' sanity before destroying their bodies. He needs everyone around him to be broken so that he can feel whole. The airplane incident is a moment of pure psychopathy. He attempts to save the passengers, but he starts off wrong. By destroying the plane's door, he causes the first casualty, a child. Soon after, he loses control due to the passenger's desperation and lets out a scream that ruptures everyone's eardrums. Then he tries to force the plane to land by pushing it, which obviously doesn't work and ends up splitting the plane in half. Here, it becomes clear that he has absolutely no notion of how reality works. The original Homelander is purely a representation of the ego without limits. You stop seeing a villain and start seeing a systemic failure. The series tries to sell us the illusion that he's a broken person, but the comics scream that he was never a person to begin with. Look at what he did to Becca Butcher. This is the event that triggers the entire plot of the series. Homelander raped her, in a context that it's implied as a brutal attack in the comics, which resulted in a pregnancy of a baby with superhuman strength. The baby ended up killing Becca from the inside out during childbirth due to his superhuman strength. As for Queen Maeve, it was the series of extreme abuse. He humiliates her physically and emotionally, forcing her to participate in 6 psychological games. In a moment of absolute cruelty, he blindfolds her and forces her to have relations with Black Noir, believing him to be Homelander, and then takes photos of it to destroy her reputation and keep her under control. With Starlight, right when she joins the Seven, Homelander, along with other members like the Deep and A-Train, sexually coerces her, using his power and status as a form of intimidation, forcing her to perform degrading acts to guarantee her spot on the team.
He is the opposite of Nietzsche's Übermensch, but without any philosophical purpose. He is existential emptiness personified. He reaches a point where there is nothing left to conquer. His plan for a coup d'etat against the American government is not born of political ideology. He doesn't want to rule. He just wants to destroy anyone he considers inferior. And the American government? He sees them as incompetent employees who need to be replaced by his own will. This is the true face of madness, the absolute lack of purpose other than the exercise of one's own will over others. Now, we need to look at the most controversial event in the comic, Herogasm. In the series, we saw glimpses of this, but in the comics, the event is a showcase of the absolute contempt he feels for everyone, including other supes. Here, Homelander reveals a level of cruelty that borders on the disturbingly comic. Soldier Boy in the series is an imposing figure, a real threat. In the comics, he is a loser, a coward, desperate for Homelander's approval. And Homelander, he uses this. He blackmails Soldier Boy, promises a spot in the Seven, makes the hero go through unimaginable humiliations, only to laugh in his face at the end. In a display of power and mockery, Homelander abuses the fragility of Soldier Boy, who is desperate for a place in the Seven. Homelander promises he can join the team if he agrees to have sex with him. After the act, Homelander simply laughs at the hero, revealing that it was nothing more than a test. The comic implies this has happened before. There is no political strategy in this. It is purely the pleasure of seeing someone strong submit to his will. He doesn't want allies. He has toys. And when the toy loses its utility or stops offering the reaction he expects, the disposal is immediate and brutal. During a fan event, he takes an entire family for a ride in the car, only to drop the vehicle in mid-air, letting them plummet to death while he watches with total indifference, saying there can only be one man in the sky.
We reach the point where the institution ceases to exist. Homelander decides, without any prior warning or strategic plan, to overthrow the United States government. Why? Because he can. The scene of the invasion of the White House is the peak of his lack of control. He walks through the halls, killing the president and turning the center of world power into his personal playground. What is fascinating and terrifying is his conversation with Billy Butcher during this moment. While Butcher tries to understand the logic, Homelander is on another mental plane. He already sees himself as a god. He is no longer concerned with Vought or public opinion. He is bored. The lack of a real opponent, of someone who can challenge him, has led him into a spiral of nihilism. If you were the most powerful being on the planet, what is left to do? Destroy the planet. He doesn't want to rule the US. He wants to reduce all governments to ashes. This is where he completely distances himself from any human villain we have ever seen. Now, let's get to the biggest plot twist of the comics. When Butcher finally faces Homelander at the White House, he discovers that everything Homelander did, all the crimes, all the atrocities, the photos sent to the press, were not acts by Homelander. It was black noir. Vought, predicting that Homelander would spiral out of control, created a clone, a backup. But what they didn't predict is that the backup, not having the chance to fulfill his mission of killing the original, would go insane in an even deeper way. Noir spent years committing atrocities under Homelander's name, photographing and sending them to him, making the original believe he was having psychotic breaks. Homelander was being manipulated by a ghost of himself. And his reaction to discovering this? It isn't relief, it is a total collapse. He discovers that for years, his paranoia was justified, but the origin of it all was a conspiracy he could punch to death. The fight between the two is the most violent in the history of superhero literature. They destroy each other, piece by piece. There's no choreography, no heroism. It is just the brutality of two monsters who cannot coexist in the same space. When Noir finally kills Homelander, he doesn't do it as a hero. He does it because he is the pure version of that madness. But the death of Homelander does not bring peace to Billy Butcher. On the contrary, it confirms what Butcher always feared. The problem wasn't Homelander. The problem was the existence of supes. Homelander was just the most visible manifestation of a biological flaw that Vought introduced to the world. When Homelander dies, he leaves behind a legacy of destruction that neither the government nor the boys can contain. He proved that with unlimited power, morality is a superfluous choice that only the weak need to make. He is the mirror of what happens when we remove all society's constraints from an individual. The TV series places Homelander within a context of social media and fame. The comic books place him in a context of pure nihilism. And that is the lesson. A monster who doesn't need an audience to be a monster is much more dangerous than one who needs applause. We often analyze villains by asking what happened to him. With the comic book Homelander, the right question is, what didn't he do? He is proof that not every trauma generates a tortured hero. Sometimes trauma just clears the path for the monster. By dissecting his trajectory, we realize that the TV series misled us. They made us feel sorry for him. They made us try to predict his next steps through human logic. But by looking at the source material, we see that human logic was never a factor. He was always, from his first breath in the lab to his last breath in the White House, a force of nature without a moral compass. As this video ends, I hope you see Homelander not as a man who fell, but as a flaw that was activated. He is the final test of humanity against its own ambition to create gods in a laboratory. And as Garth Ennis showed us, when we create gods, what we get in return is only carnage and ashes. If you made it this far, and this deep dive into Homelander's insanity made you question what you know about other pop culture icons, subscribe to the channel. And if you have something to write about any character from The Boys, comment below. Your insight could be the theme of the next video.